due diligence apply to um, startups or Luisa Martínez-Mont, Legal Director and President of IDC Valores, Guatemala. Mariana Nóchez, Partner BLP, El Salvador. Facilitator Estuardo Jáuregui, Partner Jáuregui and Associates, Guatemala. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being with us. We will discuss something very interesting for us, intellectual property attorneys, because we are not familiar with these due diligence processes that are necessary for a project that is being born is effective. We have two lawyer experts, corporate lawyers, and I've asked that they don't use terms that we don't know, we as lawyers, and if they do, please translate so that we can understand why these processes are important. We are all aware that companies, they're worth more for their intangibles than their tangibles, and so the audience that we have here, we know about a constant exchange of things, registrations, sales, and this is not exclusive, and it is more important when there is a sales process of a company, acquisition or merge of a company, because even though these are the macro, the big things which we probably see, we also have cases of entrepreneurs at all levels that must follow those steps, because if they don't, they will fail. And so we will try to give you a general outlay of that. What is due diligence? Focus on startups. We will do it as an interactive session so that we can have your participation, and if you have questions because of the subject that we are dealing with, so you can ask for clarifications whenever you want. I would just say that do it please quickly so that we can discuss more. I have the pleasure to have Luisa Martínez-Mont and Mariana Nóchez. The first one, Salvadoran lawyer, the Guatemalan lawyer, and the second one, Salvadoran lawyer. And we are going to start with due diligence in new companies. Luisa, maybe you can tell us what is due diligence and why it is important in these cases. Thank you. I will not define, but it's important that we know what it is so that we can understand the word. You have to be diligent in the review of something. If we are buying something, acquiring something, investing something in something, we have two ways of doing it. I go with my eyes closed and I invest. This depends on how much the person is willing to take risk, or being diligent in the sense that they will go and do a thorough review or a more simple review. The importance of due diligence is not only because I'm going to check an asset thoroughly, but it's also about the responsibility that those who are bringing those assets to the table, the responsibility that they have towards other people, such as investors, shareholders, So in this panel, what is interesting is that we are going to talk about due diligence, focus on how we see it in things related to big acquisitions. I have some cases where I have participated of big acquisitions of companies, but because we want to talk about what the title is, due diligence for entrepreneurs or ventures. It could seem like the same thing, but there is a note of difference that is related to entrepreneurship, where there is more capacity to face risk. Some can be more willing to accept the risk, and they might say, I will have a due diligence that is more limited when I want to acquire an asset. So to recap, the definition of due diligence is that you have to be diligent and to have the responsibility to understand and review and understand what you are buying and what are you investing in, and not only because I want to know what I'm buying, but also because I have a responsibility and a fiduciary responsibility. As you know, most of you are attorneys. Fiduciary responsibility is hand in hand to civil responsibilities, criminal responsibilities, and if you don't comply with your fiduciary responsibilities, somebody can ask why you didn't check, especially the shareholders of a company. If I propose to buy an asset, I have to be diligent enough, thinking that I am the manager of the company, and I say, let's buy this asset, let's buy this brand or this new company. I have to have enough diligence. I have to be careful to check the asset that I am putting on the table, because usually shareholders, what they want is to give us the numbers, how much this asset will represent in terms of savings or something like that. And if this asset has risks, limitations, if it is registered or not. So that is due diligence, to thoroughly check what you are bringing to the table or what you are investing in. To add to that, I would like to ask you, we want to avoid surprises as much as possible when we are doing this due diligence. In the cases of ventures, should they have a due diligence? Should they not? Because they are new cases. Well, to add to what Ana Luisa said, due diligence process is an analysis process, a thorough review of a company, of an asset, of something that you want to invest in, and or that there is a transaction carried out. And the simplest analogy is when we are going to buy used cars, and nobody will buy it without taking it to the workshop for a thorough review. And you want to know the condition of the car, how long will it last, if it's an investment that will last, and after that we will be willing to invest money on that. And entrepreneurs, I think it's even more important to do a due diligence, especially internally, because these are small companies that are just beginning, and what they want is that people invest in them, and that there are investors that want to risk it and invest and partner with them. And so it is very important that internally entrepreneurs, that they do due diligence, where can they identify risks, quantify them, and take measures to correct risks. And they might find room for opportunity to improve. And sometimes they are not in compliance in terms of regulations, financial aspects. They can find improvement opportunities, but this gives a sense of trust. If an investor wants to come, a sense of transparency that they are doing things right and that they have the intention of doing things right and show everything. You mentioned different points. The due diligence, it has some main aspects that must be considered. The audience is attorneys, but I understand that not only the legal part, you can also complement. I think that the main points are the financial, which gives an investor or the interested party the profitability, if the company is really, if it has a future, if they can have a return of investment, or if they have that, and there is something hidden financially speaking. Also the legal aspect, which is important to understand that it's in compliance with all the market regulations and fiscal obligations, brands, all the brands, patents, intellectual property that is protected and that they have ownership over them, and that the commercial due diligence, which will give you an idea and you will be able to understand the commercial sense of the venture, if it has a market, who are the competitors, and what's coming and the future for these companies. Due diligence will be so thorough depending on the complexity of the asset. If the asset is extremely complex, the due diligence will also be a complex due diligence. I have participated in the acquisition, and we will talk about big cases, and we will end up in small cases related to ventures. And I have participated in bank acquisitions, and one that I like to talk about is the acquisition that Citi made with Banco Cuscatlán and Banco Uno. I was the legal manager of Banco Cuscatlán at the time that Citi bought it. Citi did a due diligence that was huge. It was months, maybe almost a year. In the Citi due diligence, they hired auditors, lawyers, obviously, and not only Guatemalan and Salvadoran lawyers. We had the in-houses, but we had firms from Guatemala, El Salvador, Nicaragua, because Banco Uno and Cuscatlán, they had operations in Nicaragua, Honduras, Costa Rica, and Panama. But there were attorneys from Mexico because Citi reported to Banamex in Mexico, and there were New York attorneys. This was a mix of lawyers, auditors, financial advisors, and there was a due diligence that was very thorough. They checked numbers, that the banks generated the number that they said. They checked the assets of the banks so that the bank was the owner of these assets. Licenses were checked to see if the banks had the authorization to operate and that they were regulated. The litigations were checked to see how many litigations were there. They had litigations, and if there's that, you generate a guarantee account so that the buyer has enough guarantees that they won't affect them in the business. Due diligence, one of the most thorough, tiring. We would go and come everywhere, and even then, those who are here and know, those who are from Guatemala and El Salvador, we know how Citi ended, and that was a failure. That acquisition of Citi of these two banks, it was a failure, and Citi had to run away from the area, and they left the assets almost lying there. Some were sold to Bancolombia, Promérica. They sold them almost as a gift, and there was only one due diligence, which was to do a pre-review of how was the culture of our countries, how our countrymen and women clients like to be treated as bank clients in the region. It's very different. We Salvadorans, Guatemalans, Nicaraguans, Costa Ricans is very different the way we like to be treated than an American client. U.S. clients are used to type a number and the computer would answer your request has been accepted. We didn't like that. We wanted to take the phone and Lupita, good morning. This is Maria Luisa Martinez. I want a loan to buy my house. Oh, ma'am, it's a pleasure to hear you. How are your children? Very well. It was like that, and that was a reality. City forgot, despite the fact that they have the best in investment banks, they forgot to do the cultural due diligence and how the commercial part, the market, perceived the service. And despite the fact that I am talking about something very big, applies to entrepreneurs or ventures because this cultural aspect behind the companies is something that we should not forget. And entrepreneurs are even more important because they are people that one day they woke up with an idea. This is the idea that they want. They are passionate about this idea. And usually, when entrepreneurs get together with big companies take away the passion from the idea. And this could make a short circuit at the time of. Having a negotiation to buy something. I am a witness of what you said because Cuscatlan, El Salvador conquered the market. They used to treat us well, and when they went to city, we became a number, and not knowing the culture, which is a process in the due diligence, it has the consequences that we know. The bank did not prosper. They became a different type of operation. I am talking a lot, but in terms of Cuscatlan, we are talking about the country of Banco Cuscatlan. It was a bank that had a lot of roots in this country, and the brand. We are in a forum of intellectual property, the brand and logo. Salvadorans know it very well. It was a yellow jaguar. A city treated it like, well, what's that thing? What's that yellow monster? But that brand had a value, a price that was very high, and Citi paid a lot for that. Citi bought that brand because there is another important thing in acquisitions of companies, and that is that no one can compete with you. Because if they left the brand for someone else competes with the Cuscatlan brand and gets all the portfolio that Citi was buying. So that the brand was bought by Citi. They put it into their balance assets, and what do we have to do with that brand? That brand depreciates. This is Estuardo doesn't allow me to talk about that, but it's goodwill or and that has a financial value that is very high in the balance. But despite of that, it also had a very emotional value. They changed the yellow brand and the Jaguar for an umbrella, blue umbrella, and that was not attractive enough and emotional enough for clients. And the values of the brands and the intangible assets, it was not the most important thing in that transaction, but it was an asset that was a passion for the customers, and they didn't want to be there anymore. Years later, Cuscatlan comes back. It's not the same, but Cuscatlan comes back. It's not the same people. They are from Honduras. But it is coming back with strength, and they come back with a smile. I think that's the logo, similar to Amazon, and it's in yellow and black. And so people are coming back to the bank saying this is the bank that we want. We don't want these cold regional banks where they just type numbers. We are not like that. We want to call to our bank. Completely in agreement. We have to consider it, and if they don't consider it, they don't value it. Mariana? Thinking about this, if we have an entrepreneur, we don't want to scare them because they'll say, well, I will have to hire a legal firm, auditors. What's the ideal scenario? We are speaking about the bigger cases, then we will go into the smaller cases, and this forum is for entrepreneurs. Due diligence. Is it recommended to do the due diligence in a process of venture, and how difficult it is to do it? I know that it's smaller and it can be difficult to make it concrete, but is it worth to do it internally? And that this entrepreneur does it before or when they are going to sell their project, that they get it done. But in terms of intellectual property, what happens is that they have not registered their rights, so the price goes down. Tell us about that. I think in any size, due diligence, well, there is a disadvantage, which is costs, and it's a burden. It's a lot of work of people who do that. So in all sizes, it's complicated, and it generates, well, the desire of not doing it. But in ventures, it's better to start in an organized way, advised by a good lawyer. Some firms have this social responsibility, and they support entrepreneurs at a very low cost, or sometimes free of cost, and they should be accompanied by them to comply with all legal requirements, so that they protect their brands, and that they are organized, so to speak. And if it's advisable or not, I think it is, because this will generate trust. You are a serious company trying to be as transparent as possible to attract investments, clients, and you create a sense of being a real company that is focused on going forward. And I was thinking that in ventures, it is important to do the due diligence inside, but also when you are going to partner with someone, it is important as much as possible, because you won't get all the information. You have to do a due diligence of the person or company that you are going to partner with, or whoever invests capital, because this person has, they have to have the same mindset that is going wherever you want to go, wherever you want your brand to go. For example, that they won't take away decision power over what you want from your brand and your venture. So as much as possible, it is important to do it towards the inside, and also towards the outside, even if you have to invest time and money. But it is important to understand or know the person that is going to invest in you. We can conclude that for being a small company, normally a venture, it's worth to be organized inside, because let's think that entrepreneurs, what they want is investments. If they had their own money, they would not looking for someone, but if they are internally organized and that their intangibles, their intellectual property that is registered, because we've seen cases that they have good ideas, and you ask, have you registered the brand? Well, I'm on that. They are thinking of that for the future. Ricardo, you had a question. Well, for small businesses, intellectual property at the regional level, the brands, the distinctive signs, even patents and designs, they have a problem of valuation. Often the companies don't know how to value these intangibles, and sometimes the banks they don't accept evaluation, and there are no clear rules on how to do it. So a small entrepreneur, they are told, we lawyers tell them, you have a very valuable asset, you have to register it. And at the end, as it happens, they say, well, but it's an expense, because when I want to uh, do it, there is no culture of assigning this brand the right value. And often in books, they have a very ridiculous value. So that's my question. How do you see uh, this? This makes us minimize ourselves because entrepreneurs. I talked about the mindset of the entrepreneur is innovative and they want to go out to the market with a new idea, but the moment that they wake up on that day with that new idea and they say, I am going to do this, I'm going to create an app, a technology that helps to uh, help with the transportation needs that taxis don't cater to. So the moment this entrepreneur had this idea, he has to do the due diligence and the responsibility to register his brand, create his company, and have a minimum bookkeeping, because they are generating an idea, but there has to be a mindset of the purpose that at some point this idea will be worth much more.
Because wow, how amazing just to have an idea. But at a certain point, I want for this to be worth so much more. And I want somebody that wants to purchase this idea from me, and be it a bank, an investment bank, or because I'm going to go on to sell the securities on the trade market. And I just don't, I don't know. It's due diligence, and the brand evaluation goes two ways. One is the entrepreneur that wants to buy something, and they need to have sufficient responsibility to accountability. And then the one in the entrepreneur that woke up one day with the idea, and they need to have from the very beginning the responsibility of having all of this done in an orderly fashion. I'm going to share a story about a coffee company in Guatemala. I walked with that entrepreneur in the streets of New York because one day he said, and he was in Guatemala, and he said, I want to set up, these very nice coffee shops similar to the Starbucks in Manhattan. And we were on a business trip in New York, and he said, come with me, come with me. And so we drink the coffee, see the environment, see the service, listen to the music, the smell, how everyone behaved. And that entrepreneur ended up setting up shop in Guatemala. I don't remember where, but I think it's in Zone 15. But he set up his first coffee shop in Guatemala. And after he set up his first shop, he had another one and another one. And I remember so well because he was a good friend. He would call me and he'd say, I only sold 11 quetzales. I'm like, that's even less than $1. And what happens with the rent? I can't pay rent. And I said, oh my Lord, this man is gonna go broke. And I said to him, listen, is your brand registered? Accounting, I don't even want to tell you, but this was the mind of a entrepreneur who was so in love and enthralled with the idea of setting up a coffee shop and another coffee shop. That company was bought by one of the largest food companies in Guatemala that has a large presence in the region and that also has and provides um, certain services, and they bought it, and that was wrong. And they had such a hard time because they said, "Oh no, you know what? This is a serious company. We do accounting. This is results. We're process based," and and this entrepreneur just wanted to have a coffee shop that people loved. That was a place that people loved, and they weren't making more than 11 quetzales a month. And I don't know how long these small coffee shops worked within this large company. They didn't work. And so they sold it to another large company on the food industry. That chain of coffees is now in Guatemala, is in El Salvador. You can see it at airports. It competes with Starbucks. As a matter of fact, that the idea of this entrepreneur was successful. And at the end of the day, he was able to sell it to another larger company, and that company sold to a larger company for a profit, obviously. And the energy shifted than what was originally thought about. And I mean, I think it's successful because I see it everywhere, at least. And you see a lot of people with their coffee mugs and from that shop, and but it goes very well in hand what you're saying, from the very beginning you have to really add that value to those assets, because you really um when you buy something, when you pay that actual shift, and these systems, and they could be entrepreneur thinking and artistic and nice, and company thinking about results, and that is something that I don't want to be generalizing, but the large majority of entrepreneurs are very messy. They're because it's a passion project, because it's and ideas no, don't really follow a process. Just things come up, and it's a passion project. And it's just makes things easier, and that is going to that idea sometimes, when the entrepreneur woke up. And another case that I can share is Bimbo, and their growth strategy in the region is to buy sort of like the local mom and pop shop bakeries, and so and maybe they don't have and one thing that is directly there, or it does generate devices. I don't know if it's a formal. And the experience that you've had, um, how the intangible things are evaluated, and these investment banks, these local banks that sometimes participate, um, they're not at the moment. I had the experience, when I went to ASIPI. When I came to this event, I was working with Banco Industrial, which is one of the largest in Guatemala, and they had an entrepreneurs program. And they come in, hey, come in. You presented your project, and what they wanted was funds, obviously. And whomever won, based on the jury, then they would get a loan with a preferential rate. Um, so based on the fact that they had it, um, just like this case that you're mentioning with the coffee shop, um, this was born from an entrepreneur. So they have evaluated these intangibles. And how did they evaluate these intangibles? The assessment is the intangible. It's two ways, and you can't touch it. And it's the assessment of the brand. And I only use brands, but there are brands that I am more attached with, some that I dislike. That is the intangible side of things. But hand in hand with that, there is a number. That brand is generating certain numbers because that brand is the engine behind sales, and as a result, that is the engine behind profit. And sure, there's certain evaluations when you have an audit firm that can actually make the difference between this brand is worth so much because it has this ability to generate these flows in the future, and that's how these things are generally evaluated. And this brand is going to generate these flows in the future, and these flows in the future, I think, now are worth this amount. And this brand also has the ability to generate more customers because it's going to be really well received in the market. And so, in the counting of a certain company, you have goodwill, you have assets, profitability. So, I mean, for example, we have brands like McDonald's, Coca-Cola. The brand is probably worth more than what their actual assets are worth. But if we speak on a micro level, we really do need to have these auditor firms come in and assess and evaluate how much a brand is actually worth and how that can result or how that in a transaction. We have a question. Yes, we can, and everybody here in IP, we're all fighting with that so that the intangibles are more that they can be assigned a value. So if they were going to give you the McDonald's, do you want all of the, I don't know, ice cream machines in the world or the brand? I know all of us would want the brand here because that is an intangible value. And so it's important that local banks are able to value it in the macro and also at the smaller. It's just like that example with the coffee shop. You know, I'm sure it wasn't worth anything at the beginning, but if he hadn't registered it, then when he sold it, that would have been complicated. I wanted to ask for smaller entrepreneurs, what do you think about franchises? What do you think of those? And right now you're speaking about what a brand of this nature can represent and how but as a part of that, or of a franchise, they're part of a brand, of a larger brand. So somebody who's just getting started, you can design your own business and be successful. But what happens with the franchise with franchises? What? And I also have a case. I'm sorry that I'm just oversharing with cases, but this is what really gives us a perspective. So in Guatemala, there was a burger business for the base of the pyramid. It's called Cadeli. And this is a business, a lady who one day went out into the street. She was an entrepreneur. And she went out with a barbecue, with a grill. And she was just, doing, she was throwing the buns in the grill. And she just went out on a sidewalk. And she began to become successful because she began to franchise, successful, quote unquote. And so there began to be restaurants started popping up, smaller ones, but they began to franchise the business, and that way, these the lady would sell her franchises, and she then would generate profit for her. But with the franchise, you don't only sell the recipe and these. I think these burgers has like a special sauce or a sort of, I don't know. It was a special sauce, and everybody said it was amazing and it tasted so well. And the only thing that she actually sold was the recipe for her sauce, and she charged something. I don't remember what it was, and that's how the quote unquote franchise was sold. This specific case, so all of a sudden you found, like, there were 30 Kedeli in Guatemala in the city. Then and then you had 80 of them in the rural areas, and so much so that companies like Pollo Campero and so on and so forth were taking a look at this because they were again direct competitors. As a investment banking, we went into the analysis and saying, is this, could we sell it? Can we, should we buy it? And as it turns out, that some brands were registered, some were not. And the thing is that franchises weren't real franchises because all she gave out was the recipe for her sauce, but she never followed up, because when you have a franchise, you establish certain behavioral parameters that add value to the brand, and she never did that. So she just charged for the recipe. This is a recipe. Start selling. Set up your shop. And as it turned out, what it was a bunch of people that had this shared a name but weren't really connected or working as a group. And at, so at the end of the day, one of the large ones ended up buying the Kedeli branch, not the franchises. So we had to really collect the franchises because it was really causing a problem in the market to the large competitors that, yeah, that had the, I guess, monopoly of the market. So, okay, I understand that to have a franchise, you have to have a business model, but um, yeah, I'm talking the other way. How do you buy a franchise? I have a case took place in the United States. An entrepreneur, and he wanted to purchase this store, and no, he wanted to buy this store, but what he did is he copied this model and they sued him. But if he would have asked to buy a franchise, which is it's always, of course, very complex, not just copy the way this other business did things, I think he would have done well economically speaking, because there's a model, there's a brand, there's prestige and knowledge that you reproduce, and obviously you have to pay whoever is selling the franchise. But I mean, these are things that must be placed in the forefront, and just say, you know what, it's easier to just buy this. Yeah, sure. This is a way to enter the market, and um, so we have to, pay a franchise. It's a whole analysis, really. But yes, franchise can be bought or sold, of course, and there's advantages to each. And in our case, when we are working with entrepreneurs, that's what an entrepreneur should be. If they wanted to come in and work in franchise. This is an unsuccessful case. Just buy a brand. And so, Mariana, I don't know if you have had any experience with franchises, or what do you think? Would that be an option for entrepreneurs, and just have them buy a franchise? I have heard in forums where, entrepreneurs wish to do this, but they have to do it. There's a process. Yes, the fastest way. It's the fastest way to expand, but again, there has to be a process. There has to be, legal counsel, because the case we just heard in Guatemala, at the end of the day, wasn't a real franchise, and they weren't able to grow. It harmed the market, and it could have been a great brand, but it just wasn't, because it wasn't given a shot from the start. Um, yes, there are costs to franchising. It's high, and sometimes entrepreneurs are not in a position to actually um, invest in these costs. But I do think that it is a good option that will, of course, require some due diligence, that it'll require that things are done after a fashion, and with a certain order to it. I would like to just highlight that ordinarily when you have a due diligence, all of those participating or get involved have a very positive mindset. The idea is to go in and make sure that this business takes place. Are we going to bump into problems? Sure. I mean, if not, due diligence wouldn't be necessary. But let us, if you can let me know if I can expand a little more on this. What happens when you find much too many risks and sure you want to do the business, but what are the solutions if if you bump into certain mechanisms and certain risks, what happens in that due diligence process? It's important what you're saying because due diligence is not the synonym. It's not a synonym of I want to go and see everything, so I don't do the business. It's not a synonym of an audit either. Due diligence is not. It's not an audit. These are completely different things. Due diligence, as I mentioned, is getting to know what's inside what I'm going to buy and understanding that this is going to have its own risks and it's going to have its own mistakes and it's going to have its own issues, sure. Um, that asset will very likely have problems, and the least of them is that a brand is not registered, and you go in and you register if nobody else has it, but that's the least of your problem. An asset can have behind it lawsuits that it has. It's not generating the amount that it's saying, but it's pledged. Um, there's liens on it. So I'm going to look at it and say, okay, this asset has certain problems. If this asset was 100%, you should pay 100. If this asset is 90%, you pay 90. And if an asset has 10, then you pay 10. It really is dependent on the issues attached to the asset. And that's always going to reduce what needs to be paid. And at the end of the day, who's paying the asset, who's making the investment, who decides how much risk I want to actually take on? I could say, oh, yeah, sure. You know what? I'm going to go and buy a house. And I'm going to go and check it and say, and somebody can tell me, listen, that doesn't have a wall or it doesn't have a fence, and so it doesn't have a lot of security. And I mean, somebody can go into the house. So the offer that I'm going to give is this number plus whatever it is that I need to build that wall or that perimeter wall or whatever. So when you bring this to entrepreneurship, then sure, what do you want to sell? I will help you so that your asset is sufficiently attractive so that when somebody offers to buy or offers, then you find the least possible risk within the asset, but every asset is actually subject to uncertainty and risk. Sure, Mariana, and if we find these risks, and let's think that there's a price that's already established, what mechanisms exist to ensure that these risks can be treatable or over time get are extinguished? So what are these processes for due diligence suggested to everyone? Yes, as you mentioned, we really have to consider the thoughts of whoever is purchasing or investing. How much is somebody willing to pay and how much is willing to sell for? But there are certain due diligence that are successful over time, and So you can, and then whenever you hit a hiccup, then it really will depend on whether or not these can be overcome or not, and how much. When you have escrows where you leave amounts of money deposited, hoping that this risk will be solved, and if this escrow could be part of a price where you discount in case this risk actually takes place, or um, you can set up compensations that you find, and whether the buyer or the seller which wished to um, assume. So there will always be findings. There will always be things that are discovered. No transaction is ever going to be like absolutely clean. Lots of times it's just more about, before the transaction closes, just leave things as clean as humanly possible. But, when that can't be done, then you leave certain amounts in escrow, or certain rules in place. So in case that this, um, in case something happens and, either the buyer or the seller is covered, um, and you don't have to invest any more money than you already invested. So yeah, it is complex, and the larger the business, the tough, the most difficult is the due diligence. So um, besides the costs that we've discussed, some things that, what is the negative aspect that um, can derail an entrepreneur, because they're more prone to risk. If you're buying something, then you have to know what you're buying. But entrepreneurs have the mindset of, if I fail, I fail, but I'm going all in. So what would stop an entrepreneur? Well, definitely cost. But at a more macro level, it's just costs of having to pay lawyers, and those are assimilated as R&D development. And so these can represent a sense of development within each company. But moving along to entrepreneurs, the entrepreneur will make its own decisions. I can go in and say, listen, you'll be able to sell your sauce business. Um, you're going to be able to sell your business, but is your brand registered? Yes. Do you have, is your company incorporated? Yes. Do you pay taxes? Yes. That would be the minimum that somebody should have. But if I come in and I say, listen, I'm going to set up an external audit, I'm going to get an attorney, a fiscal evaluator. Those are incredibly high costs. And at the end of the day, they're going to scare away the entrepreneur. And you don't need to scare these people. The entrepreneur needs to always bear in mind why why that idea came to life. And if one day I want to be big, I want to be in the international markets, I want to have access to bank loans. So the only thing they need to do really is just make sure that they're doing what they need to do from the beginning, and and you know when you have a new entrepreneur that is trying to set up his business, okay, yeah, you have to register your brand, sure, but you have to have your accounting set up. You have to have, your processes set in, because if a big shark comes in and want to buy your business, if you don't have all your ducks in a row, then you won't be able to sell. Um, Facebook, for example, wanted to buy Snapchat, and Snapchat said, no, I think I deserve more money. And Facebook said, no, I'm not going to continue um, negotiating, because I can do whatever you're doing and I can do it through Instagram. And so the Instagram stories came up and Snapchat was, discarded. So the entrepreneur also needs to have that um, awareness to say, if the big sharks are buying, it's not that I'm gonna just say yes to everything, but if they are, how strong, how unique am I as an entrepreneur? Because if I'm strong and unique and there's nobody else that can do what I do, and nobody has the platform that I have or the tech that I have, and nobody else can do it, then sure, I can get picky in a negotiation. But Facebook basically could have copied that technology, and they did. And so, how do you protect information? That's also very important to discuss. What about, idea theft? When these ideas are stolen from these entrepreneurs, what do you think of NDAs to be signed by anyone who comes in to see their processes or ideas? But how often have you seen these NDAs signed when working with an entrepreneur with a venture? Um, and sure, everybody wants for the business to come about, but or to be done. But do you always sign these NDAs? I wish I could say the answer is yes, but that's not true. In the majority of cases, particularly in the larger transactions, there's always a letter of intent um, that entail the confidentiality of everything that's to be shared. And, it ties down the attorneys, and everyone sort of has this obligation of confidentiality with the customer and with the counterpart. In the majority of the smaller transactions, I would think no. It's not always signed. It's also very important and should be done. Because a lot of times you're going to go ahead and find out that not everything is actually really protected as provided by law, and they could become an actual victim because anybody who has the economic capacity can take the same idea and copy it. Did you have a question, Giga? Thank you. I know that we have been discussing on due diligence and when you have, new business and they're in the process of, um, so I wished that you could speak to us about the, preventively, uh, because at the end there are two clear characteristics of an entrepreneurship. The scalability should be scalable, but as it goes from there. And the second one are initial low cost. And because of that, to maintain these low costs, that is what entails the existence of these deficiencies, because we're so accustomed to work with formal companies, different trajectory, and these are different. And so I just wanted to mention that if you have had any experience um, to do this during the time when the entrepreneurship promises that scalability and being global, but they still don't dare, they don't care. Um, that is a function that works kind of like with a doctor. When a customer in your office comes in, then and I want to write in a brand. Um, and that's why I gave you they want to register a brand. It's not only the actual recipe. That's why I gave you the sauce example. So, you have to have, your legal documents, taxes, so on and so forth, accounting, because that business will be scalable, that will be attractive, and will generate added value. And, and the brand from the very beginning is going to earn value because it will no longer be about a brand that is well known, but a brand that is well organized. The secrets are well saved and preserved, and recipes, but also just having everything behind so that it is scalable. And so when the little one comes to, you have to be sufficiently strong. And you have to be, just like the coffee one, they weren't observed, and the shark was going crazy. And the little fish was going crazy too, because the little fish didn't want to, follow a process. They just wanted to open nice coffee shop that smelled well and that sounded well. And the shark didn't want that. They wanted order. They wanted the coffees that are profiting and they're generating sales.
Obviously, in that case, what they wanted is to go after the brand because big coffee chains were coming to Guatemala. But yes, thank you. It's very interesting what you are presenting. I want to ask about experiences when they are partial acquisitions. They say, I don't want to completely disconnect. I want to be active and play with this important player. And so, about the experiences, because sometimes they don't know who they are dealing with. So, if you have experiences, I will talk about the coffee experience because this was an acquisition, but this person stayed in the company. That's why I say that was a shock of personalities, because the person selling is an entrepreneur, creativity. He couldn't work on a 8 to 8 working hours, and in the company you had to register your attendance. And in the mind of the entrepreneur and our support within the entrepreneur, we have to be able to tell them there's cases where it's better to get removed from your idea, sell it, understand what you want. If what you want is to generate or the passion for your business, these are two different things. Business passion, you're going to be the owner of your time and you will generate 11 quetzales, or you go with a big shark. But if you work with them, you have to uh, record attendance and everything. And going back, for me, it is important. Internal due diligence, because this will generate value and give you the opportunity to find risks and correct them, and it will give you the opportunity to it will give you the opportunity to do things that you don't see. But if you have the state of your company, you will be able to understand what you need to do and generate trust in every person who wants to invest and participate in your business. So it is very important to do it at any stage. You were disorganized, but now you have money to do it, so do it. And on the other hand, it is very important to do a due diligence of the person that you are partnering with, to see if there is a cultural fit, if they have the same idea of where you want the business to go, because often entrepreneurs are married to their idea, it's their child, and then they don't want anybody else to decide about it. So it's important to know who are we partnering with, what is their business vision, to see if this is someone that we should partner with. I have two questions. I speak as an entrepreneur. They say keep your business as if you were going to sell it. It has to be organized. I agree, but due diligence processes, we have been thinking that the investor will come and buy me. But there is a due diligence process only if I'm an entrepreneur and I don't necessarily want to sell, but to understand the value that my business will have, or to just organize myself. And the other question is the followers of my social media, do they count to give value to the brand? And not because there is a number of followers and 20 likes or whatever. In this current world where many ventures start in social media, does it have a value when you do a due diligence before giving the floor to the panelists? If you see, all of us are focused on the fact that we have to get advisory lawyers, auditors, and check. The message would be we have to get advice. If we are with the big sharks, they are going to pay big firms and entrepreneurs who can be ourselves, like Karina. We have a new idea. We should go to the different institutions. ASIPI is an example. We help the people that need it. There is advisory to do it, and in the different countries there are associations that help the different people pro bono. And so the entrepreneurs, we tell them, ask, get advice, because preventive advice is better than the afterwards advice. If this is pro bono or not, cheaper or not, it's better to do that rather than try to defend something that is not registered. To both questions, yes. The first one is it worth, even if we are not in a acquisition process, to understand how we are doing? Yes, it's like going to the doctor, getting a medical checkup once a year to avoid surprises, because this will give you the peace of mind that my business, my bags business. This is an example of an entrepreneur, and the moment you have your venture, you should know, you should see how much you are worth, how much you're spending, how much you're selling, how are they getting to know you, what's the feedback that people give you. Because if we use social media, this is the biggest marketing means, which is for free, and the followers, and what the followers say, and what the followers send. This is something that will increase the value of your asset, because there's data behind that, data that you can follow. There's a behavior of customers that you can follow. If you have a way to measure your social media, because there's ways to do it, you can say the ones that follow me the most are women over 40, and they are the ones who like and forward and comment. And all of this gives a lot of value to your asset. So yes, entrepreneurs, they don't need to have these huge ideas. Karina is there with her venture, but this is an example. We should be organized from the beginning. We should measure the acceptance of the product, because this gives you the knowledge of, well, they are not liking this color. The color that they like is blue. But now they want something else, that the bag has a pom-pom. So all of that is value. I just want to say that due diligence internally, you can see it as an insurance policy for the entrepreneur. It guarantees that you are covered and that everything is in order, and that there won't be any contingency that will affect you. You can see it that way. And something that is important is everyone gives a sentimental value to assets, like cars, property, They say, well, this walls is like this, but the big shark, they want to destroy the house and make a building. So you have to do the due diligence, and this will give you an X-ray to the entrepreneur to see what they have, because you can give a lot of sentimental value to things, but sadly it has an economic value uh, that is measurable. No more questions, so that we can close. There is a question there. This is very interesting. Just a comment to see if you had experience at this. In ventures and scientific-based companies, there is a struggle between demand. As any venture, there is a lot of effort and work in uh, giving importance to technology and having things organized. And we have the obligation to try to have something organized, and that the financial part, the protection of intangibles, is organized, technology. And what we have in mind is that we have to be ready if in case there is an investor. When there is a round of investments, we have to be ready so that this is not work for the coming investor, the buyer. That is not, it's not difficult for them to understand what you do, what's the value. So having a good data room is the fact of the matter. Have you had experience? Do you see the difference in companies, negotiations? Do you see the difference between someone who has things organized and well presented? Then it's just about signing a confidentiality agreement, or it's not like that? I've had both situations, and definitely going into a company that is not organized, the learning curve is very high, and the wear out is high, because sometimes you have to redo certain things. They have contracts, but they're not signed, so you have to get them signed. There is a license, but it's expired, the time frame, whatever, or it's not registered, a brand that is not registered, or something that doesn't have a guarantee, or whatever. The learning curve, if you have a data room where everything is organized, and from the beginning you have enough order, it's lower. But even then, I've seen transactions where the seller is not completely organized, and they organize themselves along the way, and the transaction is done. The impact is in time and money, and you have to see how interested the buyer is, and they have to be willing to wait and spend more in this review that is taking a lot of time. They will have to do more things because they have to remediate things, and it could be a reason for the transaction to fall apart. Sometimes the people want to buy now, and they don't want to bear the expenses to correct the things that are not well. We talked about the advisory that we have to give to entrepreneurs and business people that have to do the due diligence, but in this forum we are on the other side. Let's listen to the question and tell me what is the responsibility that we have on this side, that those who are going to do the due diligence. We are just hired, we get our payment or fees, or do we have any responsibility? It's been a very good presentation, very practical. The due diligence makes us identify risks that may or may not cause that the transaction is done or it is not done. Specifically, handling legal risks identified even when these are there, transactions happen, but sometimes things were not found important, but there is a ruling, and how do you guarantee the results in favor of or against the seller? Due diligence is a review, an analysis to identify risks, but it doesn't work on its own. It has to be hand in hand with contracts, agreements that make sure that this works. I said that it is very common that out of the findings identified that they are regulated through compensations so that in case these things are materialized, money is there to cover it and the investor doesn't have to bear this. They also create escrow accounts where part of the price is there suspended until there is a definition that this risk is not materialized, and then this deposit account goes to the hands of the seller. There are risks that are not identified in due diligence because sometimes they were not disclosed, and somehow we are limited to review what is in public records or what we are given, but we cannot. There can be a litigation that we could not find in the public places, and the salesperson didn't, the seller didn't talk about it. And contracts, they have special clauses where they establish what a list of things that the seller declares. They declare that they have this many litigations and they are the only ones they have, and any other litigation that comes out other than this will not be a responsibility of the buyer. It will be assumed by the seller because they didn't declare it and because we don't have it in the radar. So these are the mechanisms, but due diligence on its own will not help us cover them. That there has to be a contract that regulates these findings and the way of dealing with the risk. What I've seen is the escrow account charges. This is money that is set aside to guarantee the compliance with the things agreed. If there is a fiscal case that is still being debated and it is not clear whether SAT or the authority, fiscal authority, is not clear if they will say that they have to pay this and this tax, so you put it in a guarantee account, this certain amount of money. When the fiscal authorities say yes, this money is taken by the buyer, otherwise they give it back, and you have to play with the statute of limitation time frames. This has to do with what kind of litigation it is. And in intellectual property is the same. We explained this before. Sometimes they say, do you have the intellectual property? Well, you have to keep this guarantee account so that the time frame passes and brands in conflict, because if they are in conflict, it doesn't mean that the business will not take place, but they detected these problems, and you keep this guarantee amount to motivate the seller to continue to process that. So if they pay the full amount to the seller, they will not be incentivized to comply with their obligations. So there are these ways of doing things. So any, what is the responsibility that we have from our side? How do you do it contractually? Because otherwise we won't protect the payments. What happens if the due diligence is not done? For the professionals, the payment is the same. What is your experience with that? Well, rather than payment, the thing is a responsibility. You have a responsibility of asking for the information you need to ask for, and review it and analyze it. These data rooms that we see online with the use of technology, they help you know if the professionals check the information or not. There is a way of measuring. You can see if the lawyer checked the contracts. How could he come to these conclusions if they didn't even check? So, and I told you in the morning about another case. A British fund came to Guatemala to buy these two big electricity distributors years ago, and I was the lawyer of the English fund, and we did all the review of the documents. You can probably imagine that was huge. This fund had a lot of advisors, but besides advising them in terms of the assets that were in this condition, some assets were not okay. We had to fix some. Some of them had lawsuits. There were escrow accounts, definitely. We proposed a way of doing the transaction, which was an innovative way of doing it. Guatemala innovating because they would merge some companies and ask for debt for the assets leverage buyout, and the transaction was done. It was successful. These two big assets were bought, these electricity distributors in Guatemala. Years after, the fiscal authority claimed that the buyer, the new owner, was not paying all the taxes, because out of a loan that they had uh, obtained, they were deducting what they were paying in terms of the loan. And SAT said it's not like that, and there was process, administrative process, as it should be, but SAT was not happy. They saw they were losing the case. They did something, and they affected even the lawyers for fiscal crimes, because the attorneys proposed this structure to the client. For lawyers, there is some responsibility. You have to be careful. Well, I'm doing this. This case was resolved happily. That's why I'm sitting here. I am not behind bars. We were never afraid that this transcended, but there are certain responsibilities for auditors and lawyers. We have to be able to say we proposed this structure, which is legal, and we saw the assets, and they had these risks, and it's not only about I was hired and paid. we lawyers, we have to be covered to be able to answer to people, and it's important to have a list of what we were given and a list of what we reviewed, because it has happened in a transaction with a bank. 2 or 3 years later, there was a um, process. There was a ruling for a large amount of money, and they said, why didn't you say that there was this amount? Because we didn't have the information. This is the list of the processes that you gave us for review, and this is what we reviewed, and we never saw this. So we couldn't know that this existed. So it is important for lawyers to foresee these things, and that we don't assume responsibilities that are not ours. We could cover this topic. The idea was to create this idea in the audience, if we have entrepreneurs or potential entrepreneurs, because well, the advice is, let's get advice. If it's big companies, it will be big firms. Otherwise, if you are entrepreneurs, there are associations like ASIPI. We give this advisory. You have to qualify. It's not that a big company can ask for help from ASIPI, because we have pro bono committees helping people who are really in need, because it's preventive advice. It's more inexpensive. It's cheaper to prevent than to cure. You can come to us, and the message is that seek advice. Mariana and Luisa said, organize things, organize your venture, because it's going to be easier to know. It's an internal review, and to be prepared. This globalized world does that big sharks can come and make an offer. Maybe Amazon or Facebook can come and say, well, it will take me this much time in evaluating. No, we have to be prepared. Take our time. So we have to organize ourselves and do things with the best advice. I want to thank the presenters. Thank you.